Rev up your engines! Today I'm going to talk about Ford Raptors. This is a 2013 Ford Raptor. Are they worth buying? What do you get? Well, I'm going to show you right now. Now this fancy Raptor has the HID headlights, V8, four-wheel drive. It was a little over $50,000 when it was new. And sure, the tape on the hood has faded a little. The Raptor's starting to get a little cracked, and the F-150's really faded away. Granted, the paint underneath is still in excellent shape. But it's what's under the hood that people buy these for. He's got a big 6.2 liter V8 engine in it. It's got 411 horsepower and 435 foot-pounds of torque. This thing is a powerful V8 engine. And of course, as such, it's a tremendous gas hog. This thing is rated at 11 and 14 miles per gallon. Yes, it has serious off-roading capability. This is an off-road ready vehicle. As you can see how it's set up, insanely upgraded suspension and shock system. It also has coolers up the wazoo. Got all kinds of coolers for air conditioning, power steering, transmission. And when we go under the vehicle, it's got a beefed up rear end. And sure, it does have a short bed. You do not buy a Raptor for a regular work truck hauling stuff. It's not a long bed, it's a short bed. The price alone tells you you're buying something special. This isn't an everyday work truck for hauling stuff. You get a regular F-150 for that. Fancy SVT heads on each side. Special vehicle, that's what it stands for. It's made for off-roading and serious fast truck drivers. If say you want a work truck and you want to maximize efficiency, you wouldn't even get the V8, you get the V6. It gets much better gas mileage. Now, the V6 really isn't made for hauling and towing. If you're getting a regular F-150 and wanted a plain old work truck, I still advise people to get a V8 engine in it. You're not going to get this 411 horsepower one. You'd still get a V8 for heavy work, but for better gas mileage. A lot of guys will get the 6 because they're going to get a lot better gas mileage. Because if you got the V6 engine in F-150, it's rated at 18 and 25, which is a lot better than what this thing's rated at. Now, this particular 2013 Raptor is stock as it comes as the Raptor in 2013, the SVT version, which of course isn't stock. But you could add a supercharger, and if you do that, it'll bump this baby up to 590 horsepower. Just realize if you do that, the gas mileage is going to go down even lower. I drove one for a while, and I was getting a whopping 3-4 miles a gallon driving it like an absolute lunatic. I do admit, I drove it like a lunatic. But you start putting that horsepower in a supercharger, and the gas mileage is going to go way down. Now, this Raptor has a 6-speed automatic transmission, and with almost 83,000 miles on it, it's had no problems so far. And of course, it's got all the bells and whistles. You can set the media up various ways. You can really play around with these things. Your comforts galore, dual temperature setting for one side or the other. And for a pickup truck, it's got a lot of room in the back seat area here. It's not one of those tiny little ones. It's got some decent room in the back seat. And it's set up pretty good. It's got an oil pressure gauge, coolant temperature gauge, of course a gas gauge, but it also has a transmission temperature gauge, which is handy if you're doing off-road stuff and you're really straining it. Four-wheel drive system where you have many different adjustments that you can do. So of course the real question is it worth the money and does it hold up? Well, as for the second question, this one's got like 90,000 miles on it. It's held up really well. And as for the price, well, my customer recently bought this, and he bought it for way less than half of the original list price. And I'd say this thing's got probably 70-80% of its life less. So if you can buy something at 50% less price and have that much life, sounds like a deal to me. Because I have another customer who bought one a few years ago. It's about 80,000 miles on it, paid less than half. He now has 250,000 miles on the thing, and it's still going strong. If you find a used one that's been taken care of, just make sure, if you buy a used one, you have a really good mechanic like myself check it out, because a lot of guys will buy these Raptors and drive like absolute maniacs, just like people who'll buy a Mustang with a big V8. They might totally wear the vehicle out and then they want to sell it to somebody else. So make sure you have a really good mechanic check one of these things out used with a fine-tooth comb if you're thinking about buying a used one. And one big advantage of buying them used, other than saving money, is take the case of this one. The only real transmission problem it has was a software program. If they're running good and you're buying a used one and now all the software's been upgraded, they've figured out all that stuff by now. When you're buying brand new, sometimes you got to go through that process with them, that they don't know what's going to happen. The software's off a little. You got to get it reprogrammed. Who knows if the reprogramming is actually going to fix it? You paid all that money for a new vehicle. Get a used one that works good. Been out a few years. Sometimes that's actually better. So now you know a little bit more about Ford Raptors, how they're beefed up. Poor gas mods are going to get a car. So you're going to expect that in an off-road capable vehicle that's as heavy as this. You know, you can't get away from that. They can hold up over time, especially with this big beefy V8 engines. Now I know everybody's going to the V6 engines. And the new Raptor, you can get a really powerful V6 that's EcoBoost with twin turbochargers. That turbocharging strains the engine more. It's also a GDI, gasoline direct injection, more pressure. That has a tendency of wearing them out faster too. So sometimes a trusted V8 non-supercharged or turbocharged engine is the best bet if you're looking for some kind of off-road vehicle like this where you want dependability. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Crank and Skull says, Scotty, when does a car become a money pit? How many repairs a year is too many? Well, you don't go by numbers. You go by the cost. And you also go by the vehicle. If you know a guy like me that understands cars, he can explain it to you for every car. Now, let's say somebody has a Toyota Corolla that's got 150,000 miles. And they need to do like alternator, struts, shocks, brakes, stuff like that. That's all stuff that normally wears out. And if you fix it, hey, they can go another 150,000 miles. Worth fixing. On the other hand, if you got something like a Chrysler, if it made it to 150,000 miles and things are starting to break, the transmission, the engine, you want to get rid of it. It's more the overall type of car you have and what kind of shape it is, how it's been taken care of. Also realize that mileage is a relative thing. Because if you got a guy who was a salesman and he put most of his mileage on the highway, 100,000 highway miles is equivalent to 10,000 miles city driving. It's only 10%. So there's not that much wear. So you can buy a salesman car that has 150. It'd be like having 15,000 miles on a stupid thing. It's all around. You got to understand the whole setup of the car, the bad cars, and of course, above all, you need an honest mechanic like me to tell you the truth that isn't going to try to sell you stuff all the time. I've had customers before they met me have been sold the farm. And one guy had a Volvo. It was 5 years old. He paid for 3 brake jobs, 3 sets of tires. The guy was just ripping them off. He didn't know any better. He was making so much money, he didn't care. But the guy was just ripping them off. I told him, I said, you probably didn't even need 1 set of tires or 1 set of brake pads. It just kept selling you stuff. So, you know, you got to have an honest mechanic when it comes to that. PJ's Goldmine, the mechanic, says, Scotty, hello from Alaska. Well, I hope you're warming up. We're running the air conditioning here in Houston. What do you think of a Ramjet 350 for a 1984 GMC Sierra 2500 four-wheel drive? Truck's in great shape, or should I rebuild the 350 V8 that's in it now? It depends what you want. You know, if you want a little bit more speed and you don't mind spending the money, go ahead and throw the Ramjet in. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you just want to have a dependable truck and you're not racing it around, you might either rebuild the 350 you have or look around. There's a lot of guys that have rebuilt 350s. Might get you a good deal on it. It's a very common engine. You might just price around and see if you can get a decent rebuilt one for that and see the price differential, because you're going to pay a lot more for a Ramjet, that's for sure. Tanvir Ahmed says, hey, what car code reader do you suggest for under $100? Blue Driver. If you have a good cell phone, you use that with your cell phone. And for, I think it's $99, the Blue Driver is excellent. It's made by these guys in Canada. They design it. They do all the research, the software. It's made in China, but it was designed by the Canadians, and they do a pretty good job for under $100. I haven't found anything that touches that. There's stuff that costs twice that also work well, but if you want under $100, you really can't beat that for the money. Martin Lopez says, Scotty, my 96 ES300 Lexus, cooling fan keeps running all the time. Is that normal? Well, no, of course it's not normal. There is a sensor, and the sensor is supposed to turn the cooling fans on when they get to a certain temperature. Then when they go down back to normal and a little below normal, they shut the fans off. And then when it gets hot enough, turns them on and turns it off. First, just try changing the temperature sensor for the fan, the coolant temperature sensor of the fan. That should fix it. Now, if it doesn't, then it can be either a wiring short, the main computer has a little problem. Now, if it doesn't overheat and it doesn't run too cold, you could live with it. But try the sensor first. That's the most logical thing. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.